We just keep finding ways to slip group of five teams on in there, and now we're on to the Fresno State Bulldogs. Jeff Tedford's group is going to be one of the best teams in the Mountain West this year, and they're going to be one of the best group of five teams, which means a chance to push for a spot in the college football playoff. With a lot of returning production offensively and defensively, are the Bulldogs ready to compete for a college football playoff spot in 2024? Well, you're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to prediction season. And I predict all 134 teams in the country. That's what I do. Well, there are 134 this year, guys. It means I'm predicting your favorite team this summer, which means you have to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. If you're a fan of a Power 4 team, well, we're almost done with those. If you're a fan of a team I haven't done yet, or a fan of a team that I've probably already done, you got to go back and watch that video. If you're big of a college football nerd as I am, you got to hit that subscribe button. And thank you for watching this video. It helps support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine, but you can support it in many other ways. Obviously, watching my other videos, subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing, and anything else you do to interact with the channel helps support what I do here on YouTube. And with that big, long speech out of the way, we can now dive on in to talk about the Fresno State Bulldogs in 2024, a team that I'm actually really excited to talk about. Hey, how do we do preview predictions around here? Well, we're going to take a deep dive into a team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the day, we'll go through the Fresno State football schedule and give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. I do have a couple more things before we do start, though. Right over here will be the team's stats they put up either offensively or defensively last season. And of course, for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. And I realized I even had my stats wrong, so it is fixed now so everything adds up. But with no further ado, again, stats over here, coaching staff down there. I'm pretty sure that's all you need to know. Now let's just talk about some football, shall we? Love talking about football, and we're here to talk about the Fresno State Bulldogs, obviously, by the logo right there, and I've said it a million times. Let's dive on into the quarterback room here. Logan Fife, he's been with the Fresno State Bulldogs for a long time now. Well, he has entered the transfer portal. He is going to play what I believe is his final couple of college seasons with the Montana Grizzlies, one of the better FCS teams. They were competing for an FCS title last year. We're this close to winning one. Logan Fife going to try to help push them over the top. So what does that mean for your quarterback room this year? Well, your primary starter from last season was Mikey Keene, a former UCF Knight. He returns to the Bulldogs in 2024. 2,976 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions on 67% completion percentage for Mikey Keene last season. You're looking for similar numbers this season as well. Maybe if he can cross that 3,000-yard threshold, cut back on the interceptions, increase that touchdown number. But overall, you got pretty solid play out of Mikey Keene last year. I mean, you threw for 282 yards per game through the air. So and obviously, Mikey Keene, a huge factor, huge contributor to that. Logan Fife, again, did get some solid playing time last year, but Mikey Keene will be that primary starter in 2024. Has shown the ability with the legs a time or two, but he's not one to run. Including sack yardage last year, it was minus 136 rushing yards last season. So, yeah, not a guy that's going to get outside of the pocket and run a whole lot. He likes to sit back there and throw. The football will run if he absolutely has to. I mean, did have a rushing touchdown last season, but again, now the guy that's going to get out of the pocket and run. Jaden Mandel and Joshua Wood will be his backups this season. Mandel probably second string, Wood probably third string for the Bulldogs quarterback room in 2024. And hey, how about this? No notable losses out of the running back room, so you get pretty much everyone back. Malik Sherrod, that should be an O, not an I. There you go, all fixed and all better. Malik Sherrod is coming back. He was on the precipice of getting 1,000 yards last year and definitely could do so in 2024. 966 yards on 172 carries and a team-high 9 rushing touchdowns for him last season. Elijah Gilliam, Devin Rivers are some other names that'll be coming back, and I will probably butcher this last name, but Jonathan Arsenault will also be back to provide some depth to this running back room. Wide receiver room, you do lose a couple pieces here. Jalen Gill, I believe a former Boston College transfer, although I could be wrong on that. He is going off to now play on Sundays. He is off to the league in the NFL, 516 yards and tied for the team high with 6 receiving touchdowns a season ago. And Eric Brooks, your leading receiver from last season, has graduated. 788 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 60 catches last season. No more college eligibility for Eric Brooks. He will move on to bigger and better things other than football. So in your wide receiver room, well, you do get a lot of guys coming back here, as well as some pieces from the portal and a freshman that I'll mention here in just a little bit. But Jalen Moss does come back at 706 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. Mac Delana comes back at over 500 yards last season as well. And then beyond that, well, it's a lot of guys that, well, okay, maybe beyond Josiah Freeman, he had 249 yards last season. But beyond that, it's a lot of guys that who knows what they're going to give you in the wide receiver room this year. Amorie Edwards is back, Jordan Brown, Antoine Sullivan, and many more depth pieces are going to see some bigger playing time roles here. Moss, Delana, and Freeman will probably end up leading the squad with a couple transfers, though. Raylan Sharp and Chadon James both come into the program through the transfer portal from FCS level schools. Chadon James, I believe, is coming over here from Idaho State. And you also are getting a Missouri State transfer. Again, that is Raylan Sharp. And then you have a freshman coming in here as well, Jordan Malaulu, and I probably butchered that last name, but highly rated freshman that could play some pretty big minutes in the wide receiver room for Fresno State this season. Tight end room, you did lose your leading receiver out of the tight end room, and Trey Watson, 378 yards and 4 touchdowns for him last year. He's off to now play at a Power 4 school in Washington. So your tight end room is going to look like this. Jake Bouse will take over as the lead tight end in 2024 with Cameron Beecham and Jake Tarwater behind him. And on the offensive line, a couple guys did graduate. Jacob Isaiah and Tyrone Sampson are both gone due to graduation. No more college eligibility for them. So who returns? Well, a lot of guys that have starts under their belt for Fresno State. Jacob Spalmer, Mose Vaval, Osmer Velez, Julian Polendo, Braylon, my apologies. No, that should be Braylon Nelson. Apologies for the typo. I knew something wasn't right. Braylon Nelson and Kingsley Ugwu, they're all back to the offensive line room. You could throw in a couple more names here as well, and I believe they have 1 or 2 transfers coming into this offensive line room that could see some playing time and some snaps this year, but overall, these are guys that have the majority of starts under their belt, and a combination of those 6 should be your starting offensive line for the Bulldogs here in 2024. Mikey Keene continued to do what he did last year, but overall, I think to take this Fresno State offense to the next level, you got to get a run game back. Now, I know that they're not a team that's going to run the football a whole ton. I mean, they had 366 rushing yards, or 366 not rushing yards total. They had 366 rushing tries last season versus 518 pass attempts. So they're obviously going to throw the ball a lot more than they run, but I think the run game has to take a step in the right direction for this team to do the same thing and a chance towards a college football playoff spot here in 2024. Offensive line, you got to get a little bit better as well. They allowed 30 sacks last year, and also they can be better in run protection as well. But overall, I think if those things improve, Mikey Keene is going to have a really good pass game. A lot of talented wide receivers here. Fresno State probably will end up having one of the better offenses in the Mountain West Conference here in 2024. When you go through and talk about this team's defensive side, well, overall, pretty good last season. Now, 370 yards per game might not be super fantastic, especially that 166 rush yard per game number might not be absolutely fantastic, but they weren't allowing teams to score as much as, well, some of those numbers may indicate. Only 23.5 points per game for the most part. Pretty solid on third down. The third down percentage number a little bit high. So there are things to work on and things to tweak with this Fresno State defense from last season. But overall, very, very successful defense last year. It does lose a lot of talent off of it, though. Johnny Hudson is going to be gone off of the defensive line. Technically Johnny Hudson Jr. there for you. He had 21 tackles in the sack last year. He's off to the NFL. Isaiah Johnson has graduated. He had 21 tackles in a sack last season as well, so duplicating the stat line from Johnny Hudson. And Kamari Munir-Bailey is a transfer leaving, had 8 tackles and 2 sacks last year, more of a depth piece, but was impactful when he played. That's a loss to the defensive line room nonetheless. So who does come back? Well, Devo Bridges is back here on this team, leading tackler among defensive linemen last year. 51 tackles, 3.5 sacks last season. Gabriel Lightfoot will also be back here to this team. 20 tackles for him a season ago. Jacob Holmes, Kavika Baumgartner, Jazon Jacks, Charles Remlinger, Dupree Mendoza, all going to be very talented defensive line pieces for Fresno State. But I think the most talented piece that they have in this defensive line room enters through the transfer portal. He's a 4-star edge rusher, according to 24/7 Sports, coming over from USC, and that is Corey Foreman. He was a fairly high impact player when he was over with the USC Trojans, and now that he's here with Fresno State, he could prove to be the Bulldogs' best defensive lineman, and that is a huge get out of the portal for Jeff Tedford's group. Linebacker room, well, you do lose Lavelle Bailey, another defensive player that's going to be gone to the NFL. Bailey last season had 80 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 5 pass defended. Oh, and as a linebacker, was tied for second on the team with 3 interceptions last season. You also are losing Raymond Scott, who had 22 tackles in the pass defended last season. He's off through the transfer portal. Fairly notable loss there. However, Malachi Langley does return as the leading tackler from last year's team with 84 tackles, tack on a sack there as well. Phoenix Jackson and Tuasivi Nomura, as well as Tyler Mello, going to be some names you'll see in this linebacker room. And you do get a piece that comes in through the portal, I believe a JUCO community college player. He goes by the name of Zane Ricks. Who knows how big of a role he's going to play in this linebacker room. Currently slotted in that third string, according to the R Lads depth chart. That's the site that I use at least. He could see playing time in 2024, though, nonetheless. Defensive back room. Cornerbacks, you'll lose some pretty good ones to the NFL. Carlton Johnson here is gone. 54 tackles, 7 passes defended, and had the team lead with 4 interceptions last season, as well as Morris Norris, who is going to be gone out of the cornerback / safety room. He kind of played a little bit of everything in this defensive back room. 59 tackles, 3.5 sacks. Again, played a little bit of everything. Could rush the quarterback as well. Had the team lead with 10 passes defended. Oh, and had a couple interceptions last season as well. Stephen Comstock does leave the safety room due to graduation, and Krishawn Gordon is off through the transfer portal. So what does that leave your defensive back room looking like for the Bulldogs in 2024? Well, Azilian Hamilton will be coming back. Azilian, probably one of the better first names in college football this year. Second on the team with 8 passes defended, 2 interceptions and 31 tackles last season. Cam Lockridge, Julian Neal, they also come back, and Jakari Embry is a transfer coming over through the portal. They also are getting a player over from Arizona State. I'll pull up his name here 1 second. RJ Reagan, who knows how big of a role he is going to play in this defensive back room. Probably could see some pretty substantial playing time. Obviously, of course, not on the board. Dean Clark, Kosai Agina, however you say that last name again, I apologize. Cameron Bracha and Justin Houston are all back to the safety room. And kickers are people too, guys. We got to show them some love. Carson King, primary punter from last year, has since graduated. So Nick Verdugo is back to take over the primary punting duties. And Dylan Lynch back to be the place kicker for the Bulldogs here in 2024. So overall, you're talking about this Fresno State team. Yes, you want a lot of things to improve defensively from a year ago. But one thing about this defense from last year is it did come up with big plays when it needed to. This is the Fresno State team that still won 9 games last season. Well, they're in great position to do so again. You got a lot of really good talent here. I think they hit it out of the park with some of these transfers. And, well, I should say they hit it out of the park with Corey Foreman as a transfer. We'll see how much the other transfers really play. But you got a lot of returning talent. Some guys are going to have to play bigger roles this year. But, hey, such is life in college football. Fresno State's one of the better building teams depth-wise. I think their defense is going to be just fine. You may even see some improvements from last year's squad into 2024. Here is the Bulldog football schedule this upcoming season. Any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's that slanted text. Any game in green is an easy win for the Bulldogs, while any game in yellow should be a close competitive game, but one that I see the Bulldogs being able to pull out and win, and any game in red is a loss. In the Fresno State campaign, well, you can't really start out much tougher than this. On the road against the reigning national champion, who are still going to have probably a top 15 team at the very least in college football this season. You could argue top 10, maybe even top 5. Even though I don't love that quarterback room, look, you got a ton of really good defensive back pieces coming back. Donovan Edwards is back. Colston Loveland, that tight end, is back. And Michigan's going to be one of the better teams in the nation this season. I just don't see Fresno State going on the road and beating Michigan. Now, maybe they can hang with them a little bit. Maybe they can fight and compete, something I think Fresno State's going to be able to do here. But I don't see them walking out of the big house with a win. However, I do see them walking out of a win in their first home game of the year against Sacramento State. That's an FCS level program. Of course, Troy Taylor's the coach now at Stanford. Sac State kind of fell a little bit down last season. Still a fairly solid FCS team, but Fresno State will be able to beat them, and they'll be able to beat the New Mexico State Aggies as well. Watch out for that one. I like a lot of the talent that the Aggies still have, offensively, defensively. Think they got some pretty good pieces. They do not no longer sit at the bottom of college football. They are a pretty solid team in the ranks of Conference USA. They made the conference championship game last season, but Fresno State is a much better team. They should be able to beat the Aggies there in week 3. You move from New Mexico State to New Mexico. The Lobos, as you now start out true Mountain West play, on the road to play the Lobos. Don't sleep on this one. If Fresno State gets caught sleeping, it could be a pretty rough day. But overall, it is unquestionable, unarguable that Fresno State is the more talented team here, and I do think that they are going to be able to get a win against the New Mexico Lobos. Hey, a program trending in the right direction that may just be a couple pieces away from really starting to break through and getting back into the postseason. New Mexico's gotten more and more competitive as the years have gone on. Again, not as good of a team, though, as Fresno State. However, here is a game where I could see Fresno State losing. In fact, I am predicting the loss here. I think you lose this game on the road to UNLV. I know Jade Maeva is gone. I know there are some really solid offensive and defensive pieces that are gone, but UNLV, a team that made the Mountain West Championship game last season, is not going to go away here, even though Jade Maeva is gone in 2024. I think UNLV has still got a lot of really solid pieces. Sorry, I had to fix something with my setup. Something was going wonky. I really like Ricky White at wide receiver. Very dynamic weapon. They're going to have Matthew Sluka come in to play quarterback for them this season. You got a lot of really talented defensive back 7 transfers coming in. I think UNLV is going to be a really good team this year. That's a loss for me for the Fresno State Bulldogs on the road. Could see a win there for them, but just not what I'm predicting. So after that second loss of the year, you start out 3-2. You get your first bye week, come back home and play the Washington State Cougars, and you want to talk about a team that just got decimated through the portal. That team got decimated through the portal. Most notably, Cam Ward is gone. He's off to Miami. The really good quarterback, the former Incarnate Word transfer, is now going to hope to go push for a college football playoff spot in Miami, Florida. Washington State lost a lot of defensive pieces too, and even though there are a lot of solid players on that team and some really nice talent overall, I think Fresno State's got the roster more built for success here against a team like Washington State. So I'm predicting a win here against the Washington State Cougars. Watch out for them, though. Again, Washington State's still going to be no slouch this year, but after losing Cam Ward, after losing some really good wide receiver pieces, some good defensive pieces as well, and they just particularly did not finish the year off great last season, well, we could see some of that bad juju continue in 2024. A win for the Bulldogs pushes them to 4-2 on the season. And of course, I have to pull it back up now. Everything's going wrong in this video. It's literally what I fixed just a second ago, and it still fell over. Anyway, let's continue on with the schedule prediction. You got some pretty easy games coming up here after the Washington State Cougars, though. I mean, Nevada, I don't think is going to be very good this year, even though that's a game you have to go on the road and play. I still think that Fresno State should walk away with that one with an easy win. Nevada's still trying to rebuild, still trying to figure some things out. Should be an easy win for Fresno State. San Jose State got decimated through the transfer portal, and because Brent Brennan, their head coach, is gone, they've lost that fire and energy with that, obviously, that head coach, Brent Brennan, that just left. A lot of really good pieces leave that team offensively, defensively. That team has been shattered and broken, and while I still think there are a lot of really solid pieces there, Fresno State, way too talented. They should be able to win that one. And Hawaii has got to show me something. I'm not real confident in the Rainbow Warriors. They usually are a team that can hang around and make a bowl game year after year. But again, 2024, a team that hasn't performed great over the past couple of seasons might need a little bit more work. And again, not the biggest fan of the head coach that they hired a couple seasons ago. I think Hawaii's a little bit down this year as well. That's a win for the Fresno State Bulldogs. Got some interesting games to finish out the 2024 season. You have to go on the road and play the Air Force Falcons. Now, Air Force is a very interesting team. Troy Calhoun, you could argue, is one of the better head coaches in college football, and Air Force loses everybody from last season. Troy Calhoun does stay, obviously, but they only returned 5 starters. Quarterback Zach Larry are gone. Bo Richter, their best defensive player, gone, and a lot of other pieces leave that Air Force team. But Troy Calhoun is a very good coach. Air Force is going to be a team that is going to hang around this year. But I think Fresno State is going to be up to the task here. I think they're going to be up to the task to defending the style of football that Air Force is going to play this season. John Boucher takes over, a lot more of a passing quarterback. It's a Fresno State secondary that I think is going to prove to be pretty solid this season. But again, you're more worried about the run with Air Force, which is the big question mark for the Fresno State defense. However, overall, I think the Fresno State offense will be able to hang with them. Mikey Keene and company will have a really good day through the air. They will beat Air Force on the road before their second bye week, where they're going to come back home and beat the Colorado State Rams in their final home game. So I think Colorado State going to be a solid team under Jay Norvell this year. Probably going to end up pushing for a bowl game spot. But overall, I like the Bulldogs better. And your final game of the year, well, UCLA, not a team that I like this season. Those of you that have been on my channel know that. I'm just not a big fan of them. Yes, they have some solid talent, but you lost your defensive coordinator. You lost your head coach. You have your former running back coach coming in to be your head coach. You lost some really good talent through the portal, including Dante Moore. I'm not real confident in UCLA this year, but I do think they pick up a couple of wins, even though it's a very winnable game for Fresno State. I'm just predicting a loss for them there, 9-3. I think 10-2 is easily achievable. You could easily win one of those two games against UNLV, UCLA. 11-1 is on the table as well, and that means, well, on the table is a spot in the college football playoff for Fresno State if everything goes right. Very manageable schedule, and they've got the talent to do it. But I want to know what you guys think about the Bulldogs in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and we'll talk about the Purdue Boilermakers in my next video. Goodbye.